Have you ever found yourself caught in an endless cycle of stress and anxiety, grasping for control in a world that seems to slip through your fingers? What if there was a way to navigate life's turbulence with a sense of calm and clarity, without being overwhelmed by the constant pressures of society and our own mind? Buddhism offers a path to mastering the art of not caring and letting go, not through indifference, but through wisdom and inner peace. By embracing these 7 Buddhist principles, you can learn to release the tight grip of attachment and cultivate a profound sense of freedom and equanimity in your life. 1. Impermanence. Impermanence, known as anicca in Pali, is one of the core teachings in Buddhism, encapsulating the idea that everything in the universe is in a constant state of flux. It is a concept that addresses the transitory nature of all things, from the smallest particles to the grandest galaxies and everything in between, including our own lives, emotions, and experiences. Understanding and accepting impermanence can profoundly transform the way we perceive and interact with the world, allowing us to let go of attachments and reduce suffering. At the heart of anicca is the recognition that nothing remains the same. Every moment, everything around us and within us is changing. Our bodies are continuously aging, cells die and regenerate, and our appearance shifts over time. This applies not only to physical aspects, but also to our mental and emotional states. Thoughts and emotions arise, linger for a while, and then dissipate. Even the most intense feelings of joy or sorrow are fleeting. Relationships, too, are subject to this law of change. People come into our lives and leave, sometimes through choice, and sometimes through circumstances beyond our control. Friendships and family bonds evolve, sometimes strengthening and at other times fading away. This impermanence is not limited to negative aspects of life. It also applies to positive experiences. Moments of happiness, success, and pleasure are just as temporary as moments of pain and failure. The human tendency, however, is to resist this natural flow of change. We yearn for stability and certainty, clinging to what we desire and avoiding what we fear. This clinging is a primary source of suffering. When we become attached to something, we hope it will last forever. We want our loved ones to always be there, our successes to remain unchanged, and our happiness to be constant. But because everything is impermanent, these expectations are inevitably shattered. When change occurs, when we lose a loved one, when circumstances shift, or when our bodies age and weaken, we suffer. This suffering is not merely the result of the change itself, but of our resistance to it, our inability to accept the transient nature of life. By understanding impermanence, we can begin to liberate ourselves from this cycle of attachment and suffering. It allows us to see that clinging to things, people, or even ideas, expecting them to remain unchanged, is futile. Instead of grasping at the fleeting, we can learn to appreciate each moment as it comes, knowing it will pass. This doesn't mean we become indifferent or detached in a cold, unfeeling way. Rather, it means we engage with life more fully and deeply, appreciating the beauty of each moment without the need to hold on to it. When we truly understand impermanence, it also brings a sense of urgency and gratitude to our lives. Knowing that our time is limited, that every experience is unique and unrepeatable, we may feel more inspired to live fully in the present, to be more compassionate and loving, and to not waste our time on trivial matters. It helps us to let go of grudges and past hurts because we recognize that clinging to them only prolongs our suffering. It encourages us to be more adaptable and resilient, able to face life's inevitable ups and downs with equanimity. This understanding also extends to our view of the self. We often think of ourselves as fixed, unchanging entities, but even this is an illusion. Our personalities, beliefs, and desires change over time, shaped by our experiences and environment. Realizing this can be freeing because it allows us to let go of rigid self-identifications and be open to growth and transformation. In essence, embracing impermanence means embracing life itself in all its richness and complexity. It is a recognition that change is not something to be feared, but something to be accepted as the very nature of existence. This acceptance leads to a profound inner peace, as we no longer struggle against the inevitable, but flow with the ever-changing currents of life. 2. Non-attachment. Non-attachment, or upadana in Pali, is a central concept in Buddhist philosophy that teaches us to engage with the world without becoming enslaved by our desires, possessions, or even relationships. This principle is not about indifference or apathy, but rather cultivating a state of mind where we do not cling to or identify with the things we experience. It is about finding freedom from the compulsive need to grasp and hold on to things, which ultimately leads to suffering. Understanding and practicing non-attachment can transform our approach to life, allowing us to experience a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment. To grasp the essence of non-attachment, it's essential to first understand the nature of attachment itself. Attachment occurs when we form an emotional or psychological bond with something, believing that our happiness, identity, or sense of security depends on it. This can be anything from material possessions, like a car or house, to more abstract things like status, reputation, or even ideas and beliefs. We often attach ourselves to people as well, expecting them to fulfill our needs and desires. While these attachments may provide temporary satisfaction, they ultimately bind us to a cycle of craving and aversion, leading to inevitable suffering when what we are attached to changes or disappears. Non-attachment, therefore, is not about rejecting or denying the things that bring us joy, but about engaging with them without the desperate need for them to provide lasting satisfaction. It's about recognizing that true happiness and contentment come from within, not from external circumstances. When we practice non-attachment, we can enjoy the pleasures of life fully and freely, without the fear of losing them or the constant craving for more. We become less reactive to the highs and lows of life, finding a sense of equanimity and balance. One of the most common misconceptions about non-attachment is that it requires us to give up all our possessions, relationships, or desires. However, the true practice of non-attachment is not about physical renunciation, but about changing our inner relationship to these things. It's about not letting them control our sense of well-being. For example, owning a car or having a loving relationship is not in itself problematic. The problem arises when we start believing that we cannot be happy or complete without these things, or when we become overly possessive or fearful of losing them. Non-attachment means appreciating and valuing these things without letting them dominate our thoughts and emotions. A practical way to cultivate non-attachment is through mindfulness. By becoming aware of our thoughts and emotions, we can observe how attachments form and influence our behavior. We start noticing how our minds react with desire or aversion to certain situations. And with this awareness, we can begin to loosen the grip of these automatic reactions. For instance, when a desire arises, say for a new gadget or a particular outcome in a relationship, we can simply acknowledge it without immediately acting on it or becoming consumed by it. We can question its necessity and its true value in our lives. Another powerful tool for developing non-attachment is reflecting on impermanence. When we understand that all things are transient and subject to change, we naturally begin to loosen our hold on them. This doesn't mean we don't care about things or people. Rather, we love and appreciate them with the awareness that they are not ours to keep. This perspective helps us to release the need for control and to embrace life as it comes, with all its unpredictability and uncertainty. Practicing non-attachment also means being open to letting go. This can be particularly challenging when it comes to relationships or long-held beliefs. Letting go doesn't imply abandonment or neglect, but rather an acceptance of change and an acknowledgement that clinging to something past its time only causes suffering. It's about allowing ourselves to move forward without being anchored to what once was. In conclusion, non-attachment is a practice of inner freedom. It allows us to live fully and openly, enjoying life's experiences without being imprisoned by them. By not clinging to possessions, outcomes, or even our own identities, we find a deeper sense of peace and contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. This inner freedom is what enables us to face life's inevitable changes and losses with grace and resilience, fostering a profound sense of liberation and tranquility. 3. Mindfulness. Mindfulness, or sati in Pali, is a cornerstone of Buddhist practice and a powerful tool for cultivating awareness and presence in our daily lives. It involves paying deliberate attention to the present moment with an attitude of openness and acceptance, without being swept away by thoughts about the past or worries about the future. By practicing mindfulness, we develop a deeper understanding of our own minds and emotions, which enables us to live with greater clarity, peace, and freedom. At its core, mindfulness is about being fully engaged with whatever we are experiencing in the here and now. It means noticing what is happening in our bodies, minds, and surroundings without judgment or resistance. This awareness allows us to see things as they are, rather than through the filter of our preconceived notions, biases, or desires. Whether we are eating, walking, working, or interacting with others, mindfulness invites us to be fully present and to experience life more vividly and authentically. The practice of mindfulness begins with the breath, a natural and ever-present anchor that can help us return to the present moment whenever our minds wander. By paying attention to the sensations of breathing, inhaling and exhaling, we can begin to calm the mind and bring our awareness back to the present. This simple act of observing the breath helps us to detach from the constant stream of thoughts and worries that often occupy our minds. Over time, this practice builds a foundation of calm and stability that we can carry into other aspects of our lives. However, mindfulness is not limited to focusing on the breath. It extends to all aspects of our experience. We can practice mindfulness while eating by truly tasting and savoring each bite, noticing the textures, flavors, and smells of the food. We can be mindful while walking by feeling the ground beneath our feet and being aware of the movements of our body. In conversations, mindfulness means truly listening to the other person without planning our response or getting lost in our own thoughts. By bringing this quality of attention to everything we do, we can transform even the most mundane activities into opportunities for insight and self-awareness. One of the most profound benefits of mindfulness is its ability to help us observe our thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. Typically, we are so identified with our thoughts that we do not even realize when they are dictating our emotions and actions. We may find ourselves reacting automatically to situations based on past conditioning, without any real awareness of what is happening in the moment. Mindfulness creates a space between stimulus and response, allowing us to choose how we want to respond rather than reacting out of habit. For instance, when a negative emotion like anger or anxiety arises, mindfulness allows us to acknowledge its presence without being overwhelmed by it. We can observe the physical sensations associated with the emotion, the tightening of muscles, the quickening of the heartbeat, and the thoughts that accompany it. By doing so, we begin to see that the emotion, like everything else, is impermanent. It arises, has a life of its own, and eventually passes away. This awareness can prevent us from being swept away by our emotions and can help us respond to situations with greater wisdom and compassion. Mindfulness also fosters a deeper connection with ourselves and others. When we are truly present, we can listen more deeply and empathize more fully with those around us. We become more attuned to our own needs and feelings, and we are better able to take care of ourselves and others. This presence is a gift that enhances our relationships and allows us to live more harmoniously with those around us. The practice of mindfulness is both simple and profound. It does not require any special equipment or environment, only a willingness to be present and observe. It can be practiced anywhere and at any time, while washing dishes, driving, or sitting quietly. The key is consistency and the intention to bring our full attention to whatever we are doing. Mindfulness is not a quick fix or a cure-all for life's challenges, but it is a powerful tool for navigating them. It helps us to see things more clearly, to respond more skillfully, and to cultivate a sense of inner peace and resilience. By developing a mindful awareness of the present moment, we learn to live more fully and to appreciate the richness of life as it unfolds, moment by moment. In doing so, we discover a deeper sense of contentment and well-being that is not dependent on external circumstances, but arises naturally from within. 4. Equanimity. Equanimity, or upekkha, in Pali, is a fundamental principle in Buddhist philosophy that refers to a state of mental calmness, balance, and composure, especially in the face of difficult or fluctuating circumstances. It represents the ability to remain steady and unshaken, maintaining a sense of inner peace regardless of external events. Equanimity does not mean indifference or detachment from the world. Rather, it is about engaging with life from a place of inner stability and clear-sightedness, without being swayed by emotions like fear, anger, or excessive excitement. The concept of equanimity is rooted in the understanding that life is inherently unpredictable and full of changes. We encounter various experiences, some pleasant, some unpleasant, some neutral, and often find ourselves reacting impulsively to these events. We chase after what we perceive as good and avoid what we see as bad. This constant cycle of craving and aversion leads to a turbulent mind, prone to suffering. Equanimity, on the other hand, offers a way to break free from this cycle. It is the practice of accepting whatever arises, whether it is joy or sorrow, success or failure, praise or blame, with the same balanced and composed attitude. Cultivating equanimity does not mean that we become numb or apathetic. Instead, it involves developing a deeper understanding of the nature of reality and our own emotional responses. It means recognizing that our tendency to grasp onto fleeting pleasures or to resist inevitable pains only leads to more suffering. By acknowledging that all experiences are temporary and that our preferences and aversions are often based on narrow, short-term views, we can begin to cultivate a mind that is not easily disturbed by the ups and downs of life. One of the key elements of equanimity is the recognition of impermanence, or anicca, which is another central Buddhist teaching. When we understand that all things are transient and subject to change, we can let go of the illusion of permanence and stability. This insight allows us to maintain our balance in the face of life's fluctuations. For example, if we achieve a great success, equanimity reminds us that this too will pass, and therefore, we do not become overly attached or arrogant. Similarly, when faced with adversity or loss, equanimity helps us to see that this difficult period is also temporary, and we do not sink into despair. Another important aspect of equanimity is non-reactivity. It is the ability to observe our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without immediately reacting to them. This requires mindfulness and self-awareness, as it involves noticing when a strong emotion or impulse arises and choosing not to be carried away by it. For instance, when someone criticizes us, our immediate reaction might be to feel hurt or defensive. Equanimity allows us to step back, recognize the emotion as just a passing state, and respond with calmness and clarity rather than with anger or resentment. Equanimity also encompasses a sense of impartiality and fairness. It means treating all beings, including ourselves, with the same level of kindness and compassion, regardless of our personal likes and dislikes. This is often described as having equal regard for all, without being influenced by attachment, aversion, or indifference. This attitude can help us navigate complex relationships and social situations with greater wisdom and ease, as we are not swayed by favoritism or prejudice. In practical terms, cultivating equanimity involves several steps. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful tool for developing this quality, as it trains us to observe our inner experiences without judgment and to see them as transient. Loving kindness meditation, which involves sending goodwill and compassion to ourselves and others, can also help us cultivate a more balanced and caring attitude toward all beings. Reflecting on the nature of impermanence, interdependence, and the limitations of our own control can further deepen our understanding and acceptance of life's unpredictability. We learn to respond to challenges with a sense of openness and curiosity rather than with resistance or fear. This doesn't mean we don't take action when necessary. Rather, it means we act from a place of calm and clarity rather than from reactive emotion. Equanimity is ultimately about finding peace within ourselves, regardless of external circumstances. It allows us to face the inevitable changes and challenges of life with grace and resilience, and to maintain our inner stability even in the midst of chaos. By cultivating this quality, we not only enhance our own well-being, but also become a source of calm and stability for those around us. Equanimity helps us to live more wisely and compassionately, engaging fully with life while remaining free from the turmoil of emotional extremes. 5. Acceptance. Acceptance, or Khanti in Pali, is a central concept in Buddhist philosophy that involves embracing life as it is, without resistance or denial. It is the practice of being open and receptive to whatever arises, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, joyful or sorrowful. Acceptance is not about passive resignation or helplessness. Rather, it is about acknowledging reality as it unfolds and responding with wisdom and compassion. It means letting go of the futile struggle against things we cannot change and cultivating a sense of peace and equanimity in the face of life's inevitable challenges and uncertainties. At the heart of acceptance is the recognition that life is inherently unpredictable and often beyond our control. We experience a range of situations and emotions, some of which we may not want or expect. Illness, loss, disappointment, and failure are all part of the human experience, just as much as health, love, success, and happiness. However, our tendency is to cling to what we desire and push away what we fear or dislike. This resistance creates inner conflict and suffering because we are constantly at odds with reality. Acceptance, on the other hand, invites us to meet each moment as it is without judgment or resistance. One of the key aspects of acceptance is understanding that not everything can or should be changed. We often expend a great deal of energy trying to control outcomes, fix problems, or avoid discomfort. While it is natural and often necessary to take action to improve our circumstances, there are many situations where we simply have no control. For example, we cannot prevent the aging of our bodies, the passing of loved ones, or the natural disasters that occur in the world. Acceptance means acknowledging the limits of our control and learning to be at peace with these limitations. It is about distinguishing between what we can change and what we cannot, and letting go of the futile struggle against the latter. Another important aspect of acceptance is self-compassion. We are often our own harshest critics, constantly judging ourselves for our perceived flaws and failures. This self-judgment can lead to feelings of inadequacy, guilt, and shame, which only serve to deepen our suffering. Acceptance involves recognizing our own humanity and being gentle with ourselves, understanding that we, like everyone else, are imperfect, and that it is okay to make mistakes. This self-compassion allows us to move forward with a sense of kindness and forgiveness toward ourselves, rather than being stuck in a cycle of self-blame and regret. Acceptance also plays a crucial role in our relationships with others. We may have expectations about how people should behave or how they should treat us, and when these expectations are not met, we may feel hurt or angry. However, holding on to rigid expectations about others can lead to frustration and disappointment. Acceptance means allowing others to be who they are, rather than trying to change them to fit our ideals. It means recognizing that everyone is on their own path and has their own struggles, and offering them the same compassion and understanding that we would like for ourselves. This doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior or ignoring our own needs. It means responding to others with openness and understanding, even when they do not meet our expectations. Practicing acceptance does not mean passively accepting everything that happens without taking action. It is about seeing clearly what is happening and responding appropriately rather than reacting out of denial or resistance. For instance, if we are facing a difficult situation like a job loss or a health challenge, acceptance means acknowledging the reality of the situation and dealing with it constructively, rather than being paralyzed by anger, fear, or self-pity. It is about being fully present and engaged with life, while also being at peace with whatever arises. One effective way to cultivate acceptance is through mindfulness meditation. By observing our thoughts, emotions, and sensations with an attitude of non-judgmental awareness, we can begin to see how often we resist or cling to certain experiences. Over time, this practice helps us develop a greater sense of acceptance toward whatever arises in our experience, without needing to control or change it. Another practice is reflecting on the nature of impermanence. When we realize that everything is constantly changing and that nothing lasts forever, we may find it easier to accept the ebb and flow of life. This understanding helps us let go of the need to hold on to the good things or push away the bad things, and instead embrace each moment as it comes. In conclusion, acceptance is about being open and willing to experience life as it is, without resisting or clinging. It is a practice of embracing both the joys and sorrows of life with an open heart, understanding that all experiences are part of the human condition. By cultivating acceptance, we can reduce our inner conflict, enhance our emotional resilience, and find a deeper sense of peace and contentment in the midst of life's inevitable challenges and uncertainties. 6. Compassion. Compassion, or karuna in Pali, is a fundamental principle in Buddhist philosophy and a cornerstone of ethical and spiritual practice. It is the heartfelt desire to alleviate the suffering of others and the willingness to act in ways that promote their well-being. Compassion involves empathy, understanding, and kindness toward others, especially those who are in pain or facing difficulties. However, it is not just an emotional response. It is a conscious intention to extend care and support, coupled with the wisdom to discern how best to help. Cultivating compassion is seen as a path to both personal and collective healing, transforming our relationships and communities. At its core, compassion begins with the recognition of the shared nature of human suffering. All beings experience pain, loss, disappointment, and fear at various points in their lives. This commonality creates a deep bond between us, breaking down the barriers that separate us from one another. When we see someone in distress, compassion arises from the understanding that, in their place, we would also feel pain. It is this identification with the suffering of others that moves us to respond with kindness and care. Compassion in Buddhism is not limited to those we know or like, but extends to all beings, regardless of whether they are friends, strangers, or even those we may consider enemies. This universal scope is what makes Buddhist compassion so profound and transformative. It requires us to go beyond our natural tendencies of partiality and bias, challenging us to cultivate a genuinely open-hearted concern for the well-being of everyone. This does not mean we have to condone harmful actions or ignore injustices, but rather that we recognize the suffering that drives such actions and respond with a desire to alleviate that suffering at its root. Cultivating compassion begins with oneself. Self-compassion is the foundation upon which we can build a compassionate response to others. Often, we are harsh and judgmental toward ourselves, criticizing our perceived flaws and shortcomings. This self-critical attitude not only causes personal suffering, but also limits our capacity to extend genuine compassion to others. By practicing self-compassion, we learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend in distress. This involves acknowledging our own pain, mistakes, and struggles without self-condemnation, and recognizing our own humanity. Mindfulness is a powerful tool for developing compassion. By cultivating a non-judgmental awareness of our thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations, we become more attuned to the experiences of others. Mindfulness helps us notice when someone is in pain, and instead of turning away or becoming overwhelmed by our own emotional reactions, we can stay present and respond with genuine care. It also enables us to see beyond the surface behavior of others and to understand the deeper causes of their actions, which are often rooted in their own suffering. Another practice for cultivating compassion is loving-kindness meditation, known as metta meditation. This practice involves generating feelings of love and goodwill toward oneself, loved ones, acquaintances, and eventually all beings, including those with whom we have difficulties. By repeatedly wishing happiness and freedom from suffering for all beings, we gradually break down the barriers of aversion and indifference that separate us from others. This practice helps to soften the heart, making us more receptive to the pain of others and more motivated to help alleviate it. Compassion is not just a feeling, but a call to action. It inspires us to actively seek ways to reduce suffering and promote the welfare of others. This can take many forms, from small acts of kindness, like listening attentively to someone who needs support, to larger efforts, such as volunteering for humanitarian causes or advocating for social justice. Compassion also involves speaking and acting in ways that reduce harm and increase understanding. It requires patience, humility, and the courage to confront suffering, both in ourselves and in the world around us. Importantly, compassion must be accompanied by wisdom, or prajna. This means understanding what actions are truly beneficial and knowing when and how to help in ways that do not cause further harm. Sometimes, our desire to help can be misguided if it is not informed by a clear understanding of the situation and the needs of the other person. Compassionate action, therefore, involves a balance between empathy and discernment, ensuring that our efforts are both kind and effective. In essence, compassion is about opening our hearts to the suffering of the world and responding with love, understanding, and a commitment to alleviate that suffering wherever possible. It is a powerful antidote to the indifference and self-centeredness that often pervade our lives. By cultivating compassion, we not only bring healing to others, but also transform ourselves, breaking free from the narrow confines of ego and experiencing the interconnectedness and shared humanity of all beings. This profound sense of connection fosters a sense of peace, joy, and fulfillment, making compassion a source of both personal and collective liberation. 7. Detachment from ego. Detachment from ego, or anatta in Pali, is a profound and transformative concept in Buddhist philosophy that teaches us to see through the illusion of a fixed, separate self. It suggests that the idea of a permanent, unchanging I, or self, is a construct created by our minds, and that clinging to this false notion is a primary source of suffering. Understanding and embracing the concept of anatta can lead to profound inner peace and freedom, as it allows us to let go of the attachments and desires that are rooted in the ego. The concept of ego, as it is commonly understood, refers to the sense of self-identity that we construct over time. This identity is shaped by our thoughts, memories, emotions, and experiences, and it is deeply intertwined with our desires, fears, and attachments. We tend to see ourselves as distinct individuals, separate from others and from the world around us. This sense of separateness leads us to act in ways that protect and enhance our ego, often at the expense of our own well-being and that of others. We seek validation, success, and pleasure for this self, and we fear anything that threatens it, such as failure, rejection, or loss. However, according to the Buddhist teaching of anatta, this self-identity is an illusion. There is no permanent, independent self that exists separate from the constantly changing flow of experiences. What we call I is simply a collection of ever-changing mental and physical processes. Our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are in constant flux, and there is no solid, unchanging core at the center of our being. Clinging to the belief in a permanent self is like clinging to a mirage. It leads to endless frustration and suffering because we are trying to hold on to something that doesn't really exist. Detachment from ego, therefore, involves letting go of the attachment to this illusory self. It means recognizing that we are not our thoughts, emotions, or roles in life. While these things are part of our experience, they do not define who we are at our core. This insight can be deeply liberating, as it frees us from the need to constantly protect and defend our ego. We no longer need to prove ourselves or measure our worth by external standards, because we understand that our true nature is not limited to this temporary identity. One of the practical ways to cultivate detachment from ego is through mindfulness meditation. By observing our thoughts and emotions without identifying with them, we can begin to see how the mind creates the sense of a separate self. For example, when a thought like, "I am not good enough," arises, we can observe it as just a thought, rather than accepting it as a truth about who we are. This creates a space between our awareness and our mental constructs, allowing us to experience a deeper, more expansive sense of self that is not bound by the limitations of the ego. Another approach is to practice humility and selflessness in our daily interactions. The ego often drives us to seek attention, recognition, and superiority over others. By consciously choosing to act with kindness, generosity, and humility, we can weaken the grip of the ego and cultivate a more compassionate and interconnected way of being. This doesn't mean denying our own needs or becoming a doormat, but rather acting from a place of genuine concern for others, without the need to bolster our own self-image. Detachment from ego also involves letting go of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. We often cling to certain identities, such as our job, our social status, or our roles in our families, because they give us a sense of security and purpose. But these identities are transient and can change or be lost. When we base our sense of self on them, we are setting ourselves up for suffering. By recognizing that these identities are not the essence of who we are, we can approach life with greater flexibility and resilience, adapting to change without losing our sense of inner stability. A key aspect of detachment from ego is developing the wisdom of non-self, or anatta. This wisdom comes from seeing through the illusion of a separate self and realizing the interconnectedness of all things. We begin to understand that our actions, thoughts, and emotions are influenced by countless factors beyond our control, and that we are part of a vast, interdependent web of life. This perspective can dissolve the boundaries that separate us from others and foster a sense of unity and compassion. Ultimately, detachment from ego leads to a profound sense of freedom and peace. When we are no longer bound by the narrow confines of the ego, we can live more authentically and spontaneously, responding to life from a place of openness and love, rather than fear and defensiveness. We become less concerned with how we are perceived by others and more focused on living in alignment with our true nature. This inner freedom is the foundation of genuine happiness and well-being, enabling us to live fully and joyfully in the present moment, unburdened by the illusions of the ego. Imagine living a life where you are no longer a prisoner to your own thoughts and emotions, where the fear of loss no longer holds you back, and where you can fully embrace the present moment with grace and ease. How would it feel to let go of the need for constant validation, to experience true contentment regardless of external circumstances? These 7 Buddhist principles are not about becoming detached from life, but about engaging with it more fully and deeply, without the weight of unnecessary burdens. They invite us to step back and see the bigger picture, to find peace in the midst of chaos, and to let go of the things that no longer serve us. As you reflect on these teachings, ask yourself, what are you holding on to that you no longer need? And what would your life look like if you chose to let go?